How do you weigh out the desires of your staff, your goals as a business, the client experience, plus the cyber risk? It's all part of figuring out your strategy for remote versus on-site work. Let's dig in.
This is The Rare Advisor, proud to be a part of the Advisor Advancement Network and home of a business model supercharged by recurring and repeatable events. Your host is Mike Walters, CEO of USA Financial. He is an investment advisor representative of and securities are offered through USA Financial Securities, member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
It's hard to believe, but it's been 2 years since the financial world sent its workers home because of the pandemic. And 2 years later, financial services firms still are trying to search for the solution, the balance between remote work and on-site work. There was an article March 18th in Investment News, which I thought was pretty interesting because it digs into the fact that some of the biggest wealth management firms are trying to figure out what their new normal looks like and whether or not it makes sense or whether or not they can even accomplish getting their employees back into the office. So how do you weigh out the desires of your staff, your goals as a business owner, the client experience, plus all the cyber risk associated with remote work? And how do you determine what's best for you, what's best for your clients, what's best for your staff? It's all part of figuring out your strategy for remote versus on-site work. So what do you do? And the answer is, it depends, because everybody has a true different answer. Their true fit is different. We have advisors who love the remote world. They've embraced it. They're never going back because the advisor themselves is working with all of the clientele in a remote environment, whether it's Zoom or MS Teams or conference calls, whether they're working digitally through the website, how they're communicating with them through group events, through webinars, all these different things. They've kind of eliminated the need for physical contact. But a lot of clients aren't necessarily going to like that. And a lot of advisors aren't going to like that. And guess what? A lot of employees aren't going to like that. So how do you figure out where you fit in this? Well, it's not easy because, by the way, there's study after study, stat after stat about the fact that a lot of people who think they want remote work, it's not good for them. It's not healthy. They're not productive because they're easily distracted. And then there's the flip side of that coin. There are staff members that you have who are way more productive when they're off-site because they don't have distractions. They isolate themselves down. They get the work done. I read an article the other day. I think it was Wall Street Journal, but it was pretty interesting. It was talking about introverts and how deeply they've kind of absorbed themselves into their introvert tendencies by being remote, and how it truly is actually a struggle for them to get back in an office environment. And then again, we have the flip side, right? There's two sides of every coin. The flip side of all that is you have employees who are telling you they don't want to come back to the office. And yet every day they're eating out at restaurants. They're going and playing sports and activities and going to parties and going to pubs. And they're doing all of these different things. They're going to stadiums and watching games. But they don't want to come to the office. So it's not necessarily about COVID anymore. It's not necessarily about the pandemic. It's about, as the article mentions in Investment News, it's really about what is that new normal going to be? And I will contend that the new normal was triggered by the pandemic, but it's not entirely about the pandemic anymore. It's about finding the balance that works for you and your business, and obviously for your clients. Some clients are not going to have anything to do with the remote world. Other clients have fully embraced it. Some employees are very productive at home. Some employees are not. Some advisors enjoy using the digital environment to communicate with their clients. Some want to look them in the eye and shake their hand. So it's all very different. And again, regardless of what your answer is, you still have to be flexible, because if COVID comes back strong again at all, we might get shut back down and you are going to have to operate remote even if you don't want to. So suddenly today, you have to have all this new dynamic approach to how you're handling things. And then you put on top of it, what are the risks? There has been a 600% increase in cyber crimes during the pandemic. So go back and check out a previous video I did here on Rare Advisor where I get into a bunch of those stats. But it's a 600% increase. It's mammoth because the environment gets dispersed. Suddenly we've got everybody working remote. So that just opens up a whole lot of new possibilities. Things your IT group, whether you're getting it from a home office or from yourself, they have a hard time clamping that stuff down. And everybody's so used to dealing remote that the human is now creating the weak link. They tell us that 98% of successful cyber crimes start with social engineering. That means a human. It's a fancy term that just means one of us'ns screwed up. We gave away information. We clicked on a link. We responded to an email. We picked up a phone call. We gave away data or information or numbers that we shouldn't have to a bad guy thinking they were a good guy. That's social engineering. So they have to get in, generally speaking, through a weak link of a human. But once they're in the back door, boom, they can go all over the place. And that's when all the damage happens. So again, here we are 2 years deep in this thing. And you have to weigh out what's best for your staff, what's best based on how you're structured, your culture, your goals for a business. What do you want that client experience to feel like? And how do you manage the cyber risk? Now, keep in mind, we all have the cyber risk. It just gets magnified the more you embrace remote, or if you get pushed back out remote because of COVID or, heaven forbid, something else that puts us in that circumstance. So start thinking about what do you want this to feel and look like? And I will tell you right now, if you're not embracing the remote world, you will get passed by. There will be a niche, and that niche will last for a while. But we saw certain advisors literally just get run out of the business because they had no way to adapt to the environment 2 years ago when the pandemic started. Now, everybody kind of took a dip initially, but a whole bunch of people figured it out and grew like crazy. And a lot of others kind of flatlined, and then a whole bunch just went down with the ship. Again, transactional revenue generally requires you to get physically in front of someone to bring them on as a new prospect, new client to the firm. Recurring revenue kind of keeps chugging, right? So I don't have to get in front of the new people to keep that revenue stream going. But the real key is, can you onboard a client digitally? And we have all kinds of systems, processes, and tools to help you do that with what we call the predictable practice. So if you need help in this area, give us a call, reach out to USA Financial, speak to our business development team. They'd be happy to dig in with you. But if you haven't gone through a little exercise, stop and take a moment. Weigh out what I'll call the 4 cornerstones to deal with on identifying your strategy for remote work. What are your desires for your staff, or what are your staff desires? What desires do they have? How does that fit with the goals of the practice or the business you're running? What does that client experience look like, or what do you want it or need it to look like? And what are you looking at in terms of liability, in terms of risk? In this case, generally speaking, cyber risk. And figure out between those 4 quadrants, what do you want your predictable practice to look like?
This information is for licensed financial professionals only and is not intended for use in soliciting sales from the public. The views expressed represent the opinions of the presenter or their featured guest, not necessarily those of USA Financial or its affiliated subsidiaries. Industry references are generic and not intended to represent actions or beliefs of any individual or entity. Content is only presented to illustrate general principles, beliefs, or ideas and should not be construed as legal or regulatory advice. Trademark and copyright protected. USA Financial and Affiliates.